Welcome to Planet People, a podcast that aims to inspire curiosity and cultivate a deeper connection with the natural world. I'm Natalie Jane, a conservation biologist, eco-communicator, and the host of this podcast series. And I am thrilled to be sharing stories with you that highlight the beauty and importance of protecting our planet's wildlife. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Planet People. I'm so excited to be here today and introducing my first guest, Cristina Santa Maria. And today we will be kicking off the Coastal Conservation series and season to discuss what we do to fight extinction along the coast. And Cristina Santa Maria is a native plant expert as well as conservation manager with the San Diego Audubon Chapter. She works to fight extinction with monitoring the California least tern. And Cristina and I know each other through the Conservation Committee with the San Diego Audubon Chapter, and we also have overlapping experience with the San Diego Zoo, monitoring the California least tern, and Western snowy plover. Well, we're really excited to have you on. I guess we'll start out with discussing what inspired you to pursue a career in conservation and what led you to focus on avian species and working with different coastal birds that are listed as endangered in the state of California. If you want to talk about like your undergraduate experience,
Totally.
Any field work that you've done that's led you to your point to be a conservation manager. I'm sure there are so many people, including myself, who would love to be in a role like yours.
My journey has definitely been challenging, and it wasn't a conventional one either.
Of course.
You're probably going to hear me talk about the San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance a lot, but that's where I was first inspired. Right out of high school, I had no plans for my future. I did not know what I was going to do. I got my first job at the San Diego Zoo Safari Park, and I was just going through the motions and just decided to go to community college out of boredom. Honestly, didn't know what I was going to be doing with it. But once I started working there, I was just working at the front gate, I started seeing how many jobs there are surrounding conservation that had nothing to do with like being a veterinarian or being a zookeeper,
Sure.
which those are like the two typical jobs you dream of as a child.
Definitely.
So my eyes were just opened, and every chance that I got, I would speak to every single employee there and ask them about their job. Like, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
What did you do to get here? Like, what's your background? Because I want to learn more about this.
Of course, networking is so important in this field.
So I got a bunch of really great advice, and once I find something that I'm passionate about, I dive at first. Like, I do all the research, and then I ended up finding my path at Humboldt State University.
Of course.
So there, I got my degree in wildlife management and conservation, and I took every single class possible that I could that was bird focused.
Was there one class in particular that was just outstanding for you, that inspired you to want to pursue working with birds?
Yeah, my first taxonomy course that I took was ornithology. So I got all excited, and the professor at the time was Mark Caldwell.
Okay.
He was amazing, super personable, and he does a lot of research on Western snowy plovers. And so I had the opportunity to go out in the field with him and volunteer and just have that experience.
Oh, wow.
So that's where it really, really began.
Okay, so you started working with snowy plovers right out of the gate, basically.
During college.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
I did start in wildlife rehab. That was my first experience with animals, was I was volunteering. I did a ton of volunteer.
Of course.
I volunteered at a wildlife care center, and right off the bat, there was an oil spill. So we were rescuing and rehabilitating like hundreds of brown pelicans.
Oh, brown pelicans, okay.
So like my first experience holding a bird ever was a brown pelican.
Wow, that's the first bird you had in the hands.
Yep.
A brown pelican. Wow, that's probably was a little intense at first, considering their
huge.
size. Yeah,
They're so big, you don't realize how big they are.
right.
So one's right in front of you.
Wow, that's really great. We have a pretty similar start and trajectory to our path. I also worked in wildlife rehab, took ornithology and taxonomy, and was inspired to work for the San Diego Zoo, and that's why I moved to California. it's like we kind of mirror each other in that way.
Yeah,
for sure.
I actually first found you on Instagram. You didn't notice. You had posted a reel where you're like laying down a bunch of newspapers having to do with your work in La Jolla.
Of course, with the sea lions.
Yeah. So I found that. For some reason it popped up in my feed, and I was like, who is this chick? She's so cool. And we've done a lot of similar work. So I totally did a deep dive on your Instagram, and I was like, I want to see what this girl is up to. She's doing cool.
Yes. And then we met through that Pat Libby meeting with the Audubon advocacy event. And then I found you and your Tina Grows things. So it's awesome that you have this background in avian conservation and native plant expertise. If you want to talk about your native plant expertise, that's awesome too.
The native plant stuff is actually really new for me. Several plant classes in college. I did take plant taxonomy, like plant ecology. I actually considered pursuing like a minor in botany, but I was just like, I was so ready to get started working.
I totally understand that.
I'm done with school.
So what did you minor in?
I didn't minor in anything.
Oh, you didn't? Okay.
Yeah, I just decided I could have taken another semester. I was just ready to get to work.
Absolutely.
And I've always loved plants, especially working at the safari park. There's a huge plant collection there.
They have a really impressive like botany section at the safari park. I love the Baja part with all the cactuses.
With the natives.
Near the Condor Ridge. Yep. It's so cool.
So that was kind of my first exposure to plants. And then I took plant taxonomy in college. There was like sprinkles of like plant monitoring throughout all of my field jobs that I've had. But I didn't actually start getting into native plants until like 2 years ago. Oh,
wow. Is that when you started your Tina Grows Things page then?
Pretty much.
It's really taking off since then.
Yeah. And I initially started it as just like a gardening page because I think my friends and family were totally sick of everything that I was posting on my garden. So I was like, well, I'm going to create this separate page where no one's going to care what I'm posting. And if they follow me, it's because they want to see what I'm doing in the garden. And I also made it so that I could find other gardeners in my area to learn from them.
So you had a niche pretty much right away and a target audience that was kind of attracted to your page because you knew that you wanted to follow
Sort of. I started with vegetable gardening.
Okay.
And obviously conservation being my passion, I led back towards native plants and conservation of native species. And then I sort of kind of integrated it into the page, what I think is awesome because I'm already talking to people who are into vegetable gardening, right? And I'm kind of using my platform as a way to like sprinkle in native plant stuff to get them inspired, to maybe get them interested.
Of course.
Because it's just like a gateway, you know?
It is a gateway, definitely. And I'm inspired by your native plant posting. I mean, it promotes great habitat for backyard birds too. Totally. Has that been something you've kind of seen change through your gardening process?
Yes. The area that I'm gardening in now was just an alleyway filled with, I don't even remember what it was. It was just like these tall grasses and tall weeds, but nothing was growing in there. It was like hard, compact soil. And it's technically not our land. It's like an easement for SCG&E to access the electricity pole.
I see.
But it had been so long since somebody accessed it. We were like, screw it. Let's use it. Let's just like rip all this out and bring the soil back to life and grow plants. And then I actually have seen a huge increase in birds in our yard.
That's pretty incredible. There's so much power in restoring habitat because it draws in, if you're planting native plants, you're drawing in backyard birds, and that just improves your quality of life and the environment around you. Planet people. You're a planet person through and through.
I want to teach the backyard gardener, the vegetable gardeners, that you can integrate 1 or 2 native plants into your garden. And it'll make such a big difference, not just for wildlife, but it's also going to help their gardens as well. It's going to bring in those natural predators that are going to help with the pests that you have.
Sure. What kind of natural predators?
I don't even know. Like birds are going to help come pick off those caterpillars that are like eating
absolutely
your plants.
Or the tomatoes.
The native plants are going to bring in pollinators that are going to help with your squash plants.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh man, I have so much to learn about native planting. I'm like so focused on the avian conservation and coastal work that my garden has kind of fallen to the wayside, but your page definitely inspires me to, plant native plants that attract pollinators and just improve your quality of your backyard for birds and or your vegetables too. I mean, baby steps, absolutely. Well, this is great. I'm having so much fun talking to you. Going back to your experience out of undergrad working with brown pelicans and rehab work, what was sort of that next step for you and continuing on your conservation journey? Because it sounded like banding brown pelicans and doing that rehab work really inspired you and me as well, because we both kind of have that background working in rehab, and it definitely left an impact, seems like, on both of us. So what can we tell our listeners to help inspire them sort of taking that next step out of volunteering, working with wildlife, to getting a job in it? It's very difficult to find good job security in this space, as I'm sure we both can relate to. So yeah, what input do you have about your trajectory that helped you kind of get to that next step in your career?
Sure. Yeah, that was a super memorable experience. Working in rehab was kind of hard. It's sad.
It is sad.
And I realized that I didn't want to focus so much on like the individual bird, right? I realized, oh my God, I could do so much more if I focus on like the ecosystem as a whole. If I focus on restoration, imagine how many species I'm going to miss that way. So what I would say to people is don't be afraid to like change and branch out and just try new things. So after that, I started volunteering more on like research and habitat restoration and how you can manage habitats to help these species. Yeah, I would just say don't be afraid to change and try new things and see where it leads. If I hadn't like gotten out of that, I don't know where I would be right now. I mean, I did start going to all these trainings for like wildlife care rescue when like an oil spill were to happen.
Sure.
I did a lot of training on that, and I probably would be with like the World Wildlife Care Network if I had stuck with that.
Wow. So it really sounds like you followed your passion to pursue avian conservation and you continued to follow your interest, and that led you to doing more habitat restoration. It sounds like you've really grown and seen the bigger picture of your impact and where you can fight extinction with native plants, avian conservation, and really contribute to being an awesome planet person. So what are kind of some of the challenges that you faced while working to protect endangered species and pursuing habitat restoration? Was there ever tension in your career kind of transitioning to that next step? Or even you could talk about some field challenges that you faced as a woman in the field, because I know that is certainly something to discuss. But yeah, feel free to take that in any direction.
Yeah, I'm probably going to give you an answer that you weren't expecting at all.
That's great. Let's hear it.
But the biggest challenge probably has been trying to figure out whether to continue pursuing a career in conservation or to stay at home with my family. I have 3 children, and it was a challenge trying to find a full-time position, being pregnant and like having kids, because field work is like really hard on your body. So yeah, I was just going through all these emotions and like this big thought process, trying to figure out, should I continue working in conservation? Luckily, my husband is super supportive and encouraged me to continue my career. So with his support, I've like found a way to merge both of these worlds. And now all I want to do is just set a really great example for my girls.
That's very, very inspirational and very admirable. I'm sure that they have an incredible mother as a role model to look up to. And I bet they love the garden. I love the little Instagram reels that you post of them, like playing with their flowers and vegetables. And it's so wholesome seeing you integrate your family into your native plant gardening. And I love when your 3 girls come to Audubon events.
Oh yeah, they come to work with me.
It's great.
They don't have a choice.
It's so wholesome. So what pushed you to continue conservation? I know you said your husband was super supportive in those efforts, but was there like a clicking moment for you where you're like, I'm just going to keep going for it?
Yeah. So even when I wasn't working and I was at home with my kids for a few years, I was still finding small ways to do conservation work. And that's where my Instagram page came into play. And I realized I have this like role that I need to fill. I have this passion where I still want to teach people about like small things they can do in their backyards. I still want to pursue conservation. So that's just that combined with my husband like pushing me, like, no, you need to do this.
Well, I'm glad that he pushed you and that you push yourself to keep moving in the conservation space. It's not easy to raise a family and also pursue conservation because it's passion work, and sometimes it can be a little draining pushing through with your passion, but it's also very powerful knowing that your interest can take you to where your passion can make an impact for the world around you, for your family, and that's pretty beautiful.
What's really rewarding is seeing my kids talk about it and like telling other kids about it.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. What do they say?
Well, we homeschool our kids, and we joined like a nature-based homeschool co-op. And I actually started teaching the kids there and taking them on hikes and teaching them about like all the native plants and the birds that are in the area. And it was really amazing when we would be on the hikes and my kids would point out certain plants or say certain bird species to all the other kids in the school. Yeah. They're like, oh, that's singing nettle. Like, don't touch that.
That is very rewarding, just seeing that your kids are like sponges. They're soaking up all the information you're teaching them, and you're teaching them to be stewards of the planet and essentially planet people.
I'm propagating more planet people.
You are, and you're strengthening stewardship in your own home, in your life with your family, and that is where the real impact happens. You can do everything you can to fight extinction and work with animals, but when you're working with your family and in your community and building on your knowledge of native plants and sharing that information, you can have such a widespread impact. And you're seeing that with your own kids, and they're growing up and learning everything.
And the next generation.
And the next generation.
They're gonna be a big deal.
Yeah, they are. They are. So leading up to your role with the San Diego Audubon, what kind of helped you land such a cool job with them? Because I know that I was super interested in that position. We both actually applied for it, but
oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'm so happy to see you in the role. I mean, you deserve it so much. You really do. And all of your experience, I mean, you've banded so many birds, and you had been with the San Diego Zoo prior to a couple summers ago, right? In like 2017 or 2018, you had done some banding, right?
Last year.
Oh, it was just last year?
Right before I got hired with San Diego Audubon, I was working for the San Diego Zoo, monitoring terns and plovers. And I actually left that job early to accept this one.
Of course.
And then I did it again back in 2016. So I did.
That's when it was.
Seasons.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I knew that you had done a field season, you know,
in the past
with them. And that was on Coronado, right?
Yeah.
On the Coronado Navy base.
My first job right out of college.
Oh, okay. That's when it was. Gotcha. So that's where Tina and I have some overlapping experience, where we were both really inspired to work for the San Diego Zoo and to work in coastal conservation with the Western Snowy Plover and the endangered California least tern, where we were both lucky enough to band least terns and snowy plovers. Snowy plovers are a threatened species in the state of California. And I think California least terns they're definitely state listed as endangered, but I'm not sure if they're federal.
Sure they're federal. Yeah.
They're federal as well. Yep. So
in the 1970s.
This was 1970s.
I think they were one of the first that were listed.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So
it's been a long time.
It's been a long time since they've been listed. This might be a good thing to touch on, is how we've seen the decline of this species and what we did to try to, collect data on their population for mortality and survival in terms of the species living in the face of this climate crisis. So in your experience between 2016 and 2022, last summer, did you see a difference when you were doing field research with them between those handful of years?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It was
touch on that for us.
Difference.
Maybe a bit depressing.
Yeah, it was. And I was like hoping maybe it was just like an off year, but I have a feeling like this year is going to turn out the same way. In 2016, there was a huge colony at Coronado. And from what I heard from like other areas, it seemed like the species like was climbing, like they were starting to do well. I think that might have been the last year that the numbers started climbing, and ever since then, I think they've been in decline. Don't quote me on that, but like I don't know a whole lot about their population. I just kind of like do like the on the ground work with them.
Of course. What does the on the ground work day-to-day look like? I mean, we can both attest to the 10-mile days walking on the beaches.
I used to have a watch specifically to track my time because I was like, I need to know how much I'm walking because I am in the greatest shape of my life.
I was definitely in the greatest shape.
I was like probably clocking like 12 miles a day.
Easily.
5-6 days a week.
Yep.
At the time, we were working 6 days a week in the field.
Oh, 6 days. It's just 5 days now. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like 12 miles a day, week. It was intense, but it was also really rewarding.
It is rewarding.
I've never felt like so strong and like so powerful.
It is rewarding. And I remember telling my friends that I would be walking 12 miles a day. And they would be
sand, though.
In sand. In sand on the beach in the scorching heat of the summer in San Diego, and 10 miles a day, and people wouldn't believe me.
Couldn't wrap your brain around it.
Right. It was intense for sure. So our day-to-day was definitely similar, even though we weren't working together. We had just missed each other by one summer, which is too bad. But because of these listed statuses with, the federal listing for the least tern and the snowy plover, that provides us conservationists with a job, which is great.
Plus they're cute, so it really grabs people's attention. It really gains their interest. Like, look at this cute little fluffy snowy plover. Look at this totally awesome least tern.
Yes.
And it's a really great way to engage them and get them to help.
We are taking a short break to bring our attention to pressing environmental issues. Today, we focus our attention on the devastating Maui wildfires that have wreaked havoc in the beautiful coastal town of Lahaina, Hawaii. These fires pose a threat to human lives. 106 people have died so far at the time of this recording, and many are still missing. The fires have also had a profound impact on the local ecosystem, including Hawaii's largest banyan tree, which has survived the fire so far. Let's take a moment of silence for those who lost their lives in this tragedy and those continuing to suffer. As we pray for the lives lost and those still struggling to survive these devastating fires, I think it is necessary that we break down the primary causes of the wildfires in Lahaina. These wildfires were due to a prolonged drought, which left the vegetation dry and highly susceptible to ignition. Combined with prevailing winds and the potential for human activities, such as discarded cigarette butts or unattended campfires, the conditions were ripe for the rapid spread of flames. As the fires raged through the region, the local community sprang into action. Lahaina residents, emergency services, and volunteers worked tirelessly to evacuate residents and protect critical infrastructure. The community also organized donation drives to provide support and resources to those affected by the fires. The environmental impact of these wildfires cannot be overstated. The destruction of vegetation has disrupted the habitats of numerous wildlife species, leading to displacement and potential long-term consequences for biodiversity. Additionally, the fires released large amounts of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, contributing to climate change. The Maui wildfires in Lahaina serve as a reminder of the significance of community preparedness and awareness. By staying informed, engaging in fire prevention practices, and supporting one another during and after such events, we can mitigate the impact of wildfires and build resilience for the future. Looking forward, restoration efforts will be crucial in rebuilding and rehabilitating the affected areas. Land management agencies will need to focus on erosion control, reforestation, and the reintroduction of native species. Community organizations and volunteers will play a vital role in the restoration process, working hand in hand with local authorities. Here are some resources that you can donate to get involved and make a difference for those surviving the wildfires in Lahaina. I will also include all of these resources in the show notes for you to reference. The Maui Mutual Aid Fund. This supports Maui residents, people with disabilities, and elderly residents. The Maui Food Bank offers food for people displaced by the fire. Aloha United Way was created as a Maui relief fund to support fire victims. The Global Giving Hawaii Wildfire Relief Fund helps first responders provide food, clean water, and shelter to survivors. If you can't donate to any of these following organizations, then I encourage you to spread awareness. Post on your stories, share with your family, do whatever you can to let people know that Lahaina residents need your help. We alluded to some of the challenges that we face while we're in the field surveying long days on the front lines of Coronado beaches. It's not easy working with a species that we know is imperiled, and I want to know what you do to practice hope when you're working with endangered species like the California least tern.
For me, the thing that brings me a lot of hope is engaging with the community, seeing how excited they get. Well, I mean, it's not exciting to hear that a bird is in peril, but it's exciting to see how much they want to help. And they are asking, like, what can I do? How can I advocate for the species? So at San Diego Audubon, we implemented a tern watcher program where they can actually help and participate in protecting this endangered species by looking out for predators, because they really are susceptible to predators when they have so much disturbance in their nesting areas. So yeah, the community is what brings me hope, that engagement.
I'm really happy that you answered with that, because community-based conservation is one of the founding principles at Planet People, and we really strive to make sure that we're including all voices in conservation efforts, and it's really great that you get to see that, and it's certainly rewarding involving people who are inspired to make a difference, and that's truly our mission at Planet People. So it definitely gives me hope too.
That's awesome.
Yeah, community-based conservation, I think, is a really great approach to just conservation management in general, and it serves as an alternative to what we're doing in the field when we were with the San Diego Zoo, and how it was very research and academic heavy, and it was great being on the ground and banding plovers and least terns and all of that, but I think seeing the real impact goes beyond just that kind of echo chamber that we're in when we're in the field of just biologists, and how we can extend this message past just the academic and research kind of setting that we are in as biologists. So I think, yeah, community-based conservation is definitely a necessary alternative when we're working in the field, so we can get our message out and get people involved. So on that note, what would your call to action be to get people involved? I know you mentioned the Tern Watcher program of Audubon. Sounds like a great way to get involved.
Yeah, I mean, I would just reach out to your local Audubon chapter or to any environmental group that's in your area. I know San Diego has 2 chapters here, and then there's one here in San Diego. There's another one in Buena Vista, if that's closer to you. But also there's other environmental organizations like San Diego Coastkeeper or I Love to Clean San Diego, and they do really, really great things for the environment. San Diego Canyonlands, and they're always looking for volunteers, and that's the easiest way to get involved. You know, you don't have to commit to going to a bunch of meetings or commit to a full season of field work. You can just show up when you're available. You have a Saturday open. Find out what's going on in your neighborhood. Find out how you can help. Yeah, it's a really big deal for these smaller organizations who rely on volunteers to get this on-the-ground work done.
Yeah, absolutely. Where would the conservation world be without a volunteer workforce? I mean, I love volunteering with the Audubon, and it's definitely been a great avenue for me to get involved in that community-based conservation, and you can really feel inspired by others around you. And so thank you for listing all of those orgs. That is helpful, and I hope our listeners who are in San Diego can take that call to action and make a difference. As we kind of wrap up here, I want to make sure that we plug all of your work with Tina Grows things, and I know you have San Diego Seed Swap, which we didn't even get to fully touch on. We'll have to save that for another episode. So go ahead and make sure that all the listeners know what you're up to and how we can find out what you're doing in your social media handles and all that.
Yeah, I help run a couple of websites. I have tinagrowsthings.com, san diego seedswap.org, but I'm most active on Instagram. So you can find me posting almost every single day on Instagram, all the work that I'm doing to help with conservation efforts.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for sharing all of that. I definitely want to make sure that our Planet People community is well connected, and it's important to make sure we keep in touch with one another and build that community. So thanks for sharing. And lastly, I like to end all of these episodes on a note about your favorite quote from an environmentalist or someone that you look up to in the conservation space. If you have a quote to share with the Planet People community, we can end on that note.
I do. I want to share a quote from a female named Rachel Carson. She has a book called Silent Spring, and it talks about DDT and all of its terrible effects that it had on the environment. So the quote is, "In nature, nothing exists alone." And I really like this quote because for me, like what I take from it, it means that we're all connected. We're all a part of nature. And I think so many people today have lost this connection. And as a result, we've seen and we're going to continue to see a huge loss in biodiversity unless conservationists like you and I can find a way to cultivate that connection with people again, with everyday people and backyard gardeners. And then we can bring back habitat for threatened and endangered species, 1 yard at a time. We need each other. We need each other to care. We need more Planet People, and I have hope that your podcast will inspire more Planet People.
Thank you so much, Tina. Wow, we really appreciate your message, and I resonate with it so deeply. And I'm really glad that you joined on today. You are one of my favorite Planet persons, so thank you for all that you're doing for the community. Thank you for inspiring our listeners and for inspiring me. I'm so glad to have you as a friend and a colleague. So sure, we'll have you back on, but for now, that's all, and thanks for joining on.
Aw, ditto. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Planet People. We are thrilled to have you as part of our community of wildlifers who care about protecting the planet for future generations to enjoy. We hope that by listening to this podcast, you will be inspired to connect with nature and become a steward of the planet by getting involved and taking action with your local community conservation organization. Until next time, stay positive, Planet People. Thank you to my team here at Planet People. This episode was produced by Natalie Jane Sybil, Coral Carson, and Hugh Carr. Edited by Coral Carson. Theme song by Hugh Carr under the artist name Flama. Thank you, team.